All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. And for all of you fans of the Pac 12 conference, the dawn of a new era is finally here. Of course, Washington State and Oregon State are the only holdovers from the original Pac 12 as they got Boise State, Utah State, San Diego State, Fresno State to all come over from the Pac-12. I mean, from the Mountain West rather, to join them. It was five schools altogether: Boise, San Diego State, Fresno, Utah State were all in that mix. And then, of course, you get Texas State coming over from the Sun Belt as well to form to give them eight teams rather to form the new Pac-12. It's going to be a flex schedule, as one you're going to play one opponent twice within the year to give you eight conference games. But nonetheless, let's see how things work out for the new Pac-12. So you've got Boise, and they're looking to live up to the hype. I mean, they've won the Mountain West the last several years on their way out the door, and there are some people who feel that they can go out there and win the Pac-12. Matter of fact, they won the Mountain West in each of the last 3 years. Head coach Spencer Danielson has his finger on the pulse of this team. You have an experienced quarterback in Madsen. I love the way that the Broncos run the football with the likes of Siri Gaines and Dylan Riley. You have a very experienced offensive line led by left tackle Tyler Etheridge, and then defensively, Jaden Vergen Morgan has the potential to be one of the best edge rushers in the Pac-12. Also, Bone Phillips at outside linebacker. I'm looking at Boise, and I think that they're going to be in the mix to win this conference. The two games against Utah State are going to go a long way. And then I have penciled or circled rather on the 10th of October when the Broncos travel to take on Fresno State, and then when they host San Diego State on the 21st of November. That game could come down to who is going to host the Pac-12 championship game. And speaking of San Diego State, just like Boise, there are some people who feel that the Broncos can win this league. The Broncos, along with Boise, New Mexico, and UNLV, were all a part of a four-way tie atop the Mountain West last year. A big reason for that for the Aztecs, they had a very stingy defense that was 11th in the nation. Now, they lost their top tackler, Owen Chambliss. He transferred to Nebraska. They also lost a lot of talent from that unit in the portal. But keep an eye out for senior strong safety DeLaShawn Staley. Offensively for the Aztecs, I like quarterback Jaden Denegal as well as running back Lucky Sutton, as I feel like he has the potential to be one of the better ball carriers this year in the Pac-12. For me, aside from the Boise game, the two games with Fresno are going to go a long way in determining whether or not San Diego State can win the Pac-12. You've got Fresno State. And of course, last year they were in the middle of the pack in the Mountain West. But of course, they're looking for a new path, if you will, in the Pac-12 this year. They're building off of a 9-4 season under head coach Matt Ertz. They're bringing in former Maryland quarterback Christian Martin, who saw limited time last year for the Terrapins. The Bulldogs had one of the top defenses in the Mountain West a year ago. They're hopeful that that carries over to the Pac-12 with the likes of outside linebacker Kavion Thunderbird. Two games against San Diego State as well as hosting Boise on the 10th of October are going to go a long way for the chances of Fresno State. Then you have one of the holdovers in the in the Pac-12, and I'm talking about Oregon State. And of course, for Oregon State, they are hopeful that the dust has finally settled, because this program was left for dead after the destruction of the original Pac-12. But along with Washington State, Oregon State hung in there in the attempt to relaunch the once proud Conference of Champions. So The destruction of the original Pac-12 saw Oregon State lose their head football coach, Jonathan Smith, to Michigan State. Of course, since then, he's been fired, while his replacement, Trent Bray, was fired after less than 2 seasons in Corvallis. So basically, the Beavers have seen two of their alums, either leave or not get it done as the head coach. And now you go and get former Alabama assistant Jamarcus Shepard to try to get things going for Oregon State, as he's literally starting from scratch. You do have senior quarterback Malik Murphy. You do have running back Cornell Hatcher. And then defensively, you have Aiden Sullivan at middle linebacker. But I think for Oregon State, they're just trying to get some semblance of order on their program. D, what's going on, man? Hang tight, because I got a lot to talk about for the Pac-12. I already talked about Fresno. I know how you feel about them, but definitely I got more to talk about them, so definitely stay tuned. For Utah State, this is Bronco Mendenhall's second season in Logan. The Aggies went 6-7 last year. I look at this defense, and they've got a lot of room for improvement defensively. Utah State was 131st in the nation. That's not going to get it done. You've got outside linebacker Bronson Alevial. You have DT Tyree Morris, and then cornerback D'Angelo Mays. So there's talent at each level of this defense. But the bottom line is the Aggies need to go out there and make plays. Offensively, Utah State is bringing in former BYU quarterback McKay Hillstead, but I expect running back Javen Jacobs, rather, to get a heavy dose of the workload this year. For Utah State, interesting schedule for them. They're at Boise on the 3rd of October. They get Fresno at home on the 7th of November, and then they travel to San Diego State on the 14th. Another newcomer to the Pac-12, Texas State. And there are some people who think that Texas State can make some noise immediately in this league. And I understand, because Texas State has a veteran team. Defensively, the Bobcats were 5th in the nation in offense a year ago. You've got quarterback Brad Jackson. You have running back Greg Burrell, and you have two dynamic wide receivers in Bo Sparks and Chris Don Jr. Defensively, keep an eye out for defensive end Donterry Russell, as well as outside linebacker Aiden Jones. In total, defensively for head coach G.J. Kinney, the Bobcats are projected to have 7 seniors starting on defense. In their non-conference slate of games, it's a Texas affair for Texas State. In 3 consecutive weeks, they take on Texas, UTSA, and North Texas. I think Texas State can creep up on some people, and I think they could be a surprise in the Pac-12 running. For Washington State, like I said, along with Oregon State, they were at the forefront of rebuilding the Pac-12. But you got to wonder how the Cougars are going to match up initially in regards to the rest of the competition. So you're bringing in another new head coach at Wazoo, this time in Kirby Moore. He's going to be the 3rd different head coach in as many years for Washington State, as they lost their last 2 head coaches to jobs in the power conferences, Wake Forest and Iowa State, respectively. Senior wide receiver Tony Freeman could make an impact. There's going to be plenty of new names on the defense for the Cougars due to the portal. But for me, like I said before in the past, and I'll say it again, unfortunately for Washington State and Oregon State, they basically got the death penalty without getting the death penalty in regards to what happened to the Pac-12, and they're starting over from scratch. For Colorado State, they're hoping for better results in the Pac-12 in comparison to the Mountain West last year. We saw them go 6-1 in the Mountain West in 2024. They were one of the top teams there. They couldn't get it done last year. Of course, that resulted in Jay Norvell being let go as head coach. And of course, he has been replaced by Jim Mora Jr. Jim Mora Jr. had some success at UCLA, had one bad year, and the folks there let him go. And I guarantee you that the folks at UCLA would love to have a do-over for that. Jim Mora Jr. went to Connecticut and showed that he could still coach. He got the Huskies to consecutive 9-win seasons. He's a West Coast guy at heart. And when this job came open, I think Colorado State simply made Jim Mora an offer that he could not refuse. This is a guy, he's going to have the opportunity to shape this program in his own image. It's going to start defensively because that's Jim Mora's side of the football. The Rams were 124th in the nation a year ago. The only holdover realistically for this unit is strong safety Jace Bella. Jim Mora brought a lot of players in on defense from the portal. He also basically has a new offensive line due to the portal. And I like one playmaker that Colorado State has on offense in Tommy Marr. But for Colorado State, I think they're going to be fighting an uphill battle this year. They're going to take their bumps, but as the season progresses, they're going to get better. And I think that Jim Mora is going to be the guy to get Colorado State turned around. You're saying that the Beavs and Cougs go last in this conference that they built. There's a strong possibility of that because unlike the new 6 teams that are coming into the Pac-12, those schools can hit the ground running. Most of them have the same coaches from last year, a lot of the same players. Like I said before, Washington State and Oregon State are basically starting over from scratch. But I'm looking at this league right now, and I think the teams that definitely keep an eye out for as far as winning the Pac-12, I do believe that Boise State is going to be in that mix. I think that San Diego State is going to be in that mix. I think Texas State and Fresno can be dark horses. Okay, I truly do think so. I think Texas State's offense is going to make them very intriguing. It's going to be interesting this year in the Pac-12 because there is so much unfamiliarity with a lot of these teams. Yeah, you have 5 teams coming over from the Mountain West, but they're not. I know that the Mountain West and Oregon State and Washington State had that agreement, but there's still not a lot of familiarity there. And then there's no familiarity with Texas State. And I think that could work to the Bobcats' advantage. But when it's all said and done, you have all of these different styles that are looking to mesh together this year in this league. You're saying Fresno State going for 4 straight against Boise, and we play them at home this year. Well, with Fresno State, is one of those interesting things. Fresno State has been a thorn in the side of Boise, while Boise, for their time in the Mountain West, were always a thorn in the side of UNLV. Sometimes you simply just have the number of an opponent. That's the way it's going right now with Fresno. I'll tell you like this: out of the group of 6, I definitely do think that the winner of the Pac-12 is going to be in the mix to get that automatic bid to the college football playoff. It's one of those where, the powers that be, if you will, have made it so difficult for the group of 6. And every time that the group of 6 achieves something, they just add more hurdles, if you will, for them to try to overcome. You think back to the 14 playoff when we saw Cincinnati out of the American make the playoff, and everybody was like, well, wait a minute, how'd they get here? Okay. You think about it upon the initial 12-team CFP, where the top 4 or the highest 4 ranked conference champions got a first round bye. Boise State out of the Mountain West did it, and they were like, well, wait a minute, this can't happen. Then last year, it was the 5 highest rated conference champions were going to make the college football playoff. And then, of course, it was James Madison along with Tulane. And, of course, no ACC champion in Duke. They couldn't allow that to happen. Now there's talks about making the ACC champion or whoever is the champion of each power conference an automatic qualifier. Yeah, you're saying the group of 6 definitely needs a CFP win. The deck is stacked against them. The deck is always going to be stacked against them because now, barring something immensely unforeseen, the group of 6 winner is not going to get a first round bye. They're probably not even going to get a home playoff game in round 1. So they're going to be at a huge disadvantage. We saw James Madison go to Oregon last year in the first round. They gave the Ducks all that they could handle, okay? And Ole Miss was just a bad matchup for Tulane last year. Okay, that's the bottom line. But nonetheless, um, it's really an us against the world mantra, and it's got to be something like how we see in the NCAA tournament, where a 16 seed upsets a number one seed. They're making it darn near impossible for it to happen in the CFP. But nonetheless, I do believe that the winner of this league. Is going to have a good opportunity to get that automatic bid. I'm looking at the championship game. I'm going San Diego State, Boise State. I think this game would really come down to who gets home field advantage. I feel like if it's San Diego State and Boise State playing for the championship of the Pac-12, you have a scenario where home field advantage would mean so much to either team. San Diego State does not want to go to Boise in early December. It's cold. The elements favor the Broncos. The Broncos can play at San Diego State, but I think not being in that cold weather would serve as a disadvantage for them or more of an advantage for the Aztecs. Yeah, I talked about the flex week. The flex week is going to make it tough because you have the possibility that two of these teams could meet three times this year, twice in the regular season and once more for the Pac-12 championship. And of course, when you meet more than once in the season, you basically throw the rule book out of the window. Imagine what it would be like for three times. I'll tell you like this. There's a very good possibility that one of the new kids on the block is going to win the Pac-12 this year. On the surface, Oregon State and Washington State probably wouldn't want that. But at the end of the day, I think they'll be okay with it because A, it means that they're back in business. And then B, like I said before, these two programs, unfortunately, have to start over from the ground up. And I think it's going to take a little bit of time for Oregon State and Washington State to really get their sea legs going because of what was done to them without having a conference. Okay, and even with this league, it's back, but there's still a possibility of coaches leaving for bigger jobs. Okay, make no mistake about it, because the money at these schools does not compare to what it is at the power conferences. But nonetheless, I still think that the Pac-12, like I've been saying all along, is still in a very good position. They have the potential to be one of the top group of six leagues. They're already doing it money-wise with their television deal. But at the end of the day, talk is cheap. You still got to go out there and prove it. I think, like I said before, them going out there and getting some of the premier schools that the Mountain West had to offer, especially from the football aspect, with Boise is definitely going to help this league out. And I think Boise will have an opportunity to set the tone early on in their early stages in the Pac-12. So I'm picking the Broncos to win the Pac-12. It's one of those where they did their thing and they dominated the Western Athletic Conference on their way out the door. They were one of the more dominant teams during their time in the Mountain West, and now I think they have the opportunity to carry it over to the Pac-12. I think this is going to be a very competitive league. I think the familiarity of the Mountain West schools is going to make it intriguing, and the lack of familiarity with some of these schools is also going to make it intriguing as well. I think Texas State is going to be fun to watch. Definitely San Diego State, even though they lost a lot of players, I think that defense is still going to be a force to be reckoned with. Boise just comes at you. Okay, that there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And like I said before, Utah State with Bronco Mendenhall, they're going to not have a quit. Jim Mora is going to light a fire under these kids at Colorado State, and I think this is going to make for a very intriguing season in this league. But nonetheless, when it's all said and done, I'm picking the Broncos to win the new Pac-12 in year number one. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. And as always, if you like what you heard and saw on this podcast, definitely feel free to hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. It's always appreciated. And if you have already subscribed to the channel, definitely be sure to share this info with a friend or two. Also, as I continue to go through my conference by conference breakdowns for the upcoming college football season. Definitely be sure to check out this channel tomorrow as I will be talking all things in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Also, if you are on the X, formerly known as Twitter, you can check me out anytime at 300 pounds of sports. And like I always say, if you give me that follow, it will be my pleasure to do the same in return. And that also goes for Instagram, and you can check me out at 300 pounds of sports knowledge. Also, if you are on Facebook, definitely be sure to check out the Sports Depot 365. And as far as I'm concerned, one of the better sports groups going on social media. But until next time, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying thanks once again for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.